it reminds me the situation from 2008. You remember we were watching this movie, Big Short?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
About the crisis in the 2008 because of the recession.
Very similar themes. I was just thinking about it. Also, bad loans, like the banks borrowing more money than they had and making very bad risk assessments.
Yeah. Hello guys.
Hi everyone.
I am Waldemar.
And I'm Veronica.
And today we are going to educate ourselves. We are watching a video called The Great Depression in 12 minutes from the channel called Casual Economics. It's a small channel, 50,000 subscribers, but this video is pretty popular, 2 million views. And I thought it's going to be interesting to watch, even if you are not going to be that interested in this video because it's not the kind of video that is most popular on our channel, but we thought that we would like to learn something about it. For a long time, I was under the impression that the Great Depression and the Wall Street crash is the same event.
Oh, really?
You didn't?
I wasn't, because I read a Bukowski book when I was in middle school, and there was the period of the Great Depression, so that's how I knew about it.
Yeah. For some reason, for some time, for me that was one event, you know. And I of course know about I knew about the Great Depression, but when I think about it now, I don't really know what was the reason for it. I know the repercussion that it created in history. Yeah,
just there was a lot of recession and not much work and not much food and not much things to buy.
Yeah, but that was the effect. What was the reason for that? I don't know. Yeah, and it was a very important event in history because basically that was why the Nazis came to power in Germany. If not for the Great Depression, then probably the Weimar Republic would be still existing today. Or maybe not, but at least, we wouldn't have the Nazis in power and the Second World War. So it's important thing to understand and, to be careful in the future, seeing signs of that.
I'm actually really happy that you have chosen this video because I always wanted to learn about it like more, and I've never really gotten around to sitting down and learning about it. So I'm really happy that we'll watch it. Because I think it's like you're saying, there was so many events that it affected, and it's such a big part of the U.S. history as well, and like of the culture as well.
World history too, because it affected the whole world.
Yeah, and even in the culture, like in the movies or in the books, it's often very, very often mentioned because it's such a big part of the history. So I think it would be really good to have some more context on it. Yep.
Yeah, and it's 12 minutes, so exactly 12 minutes. So I think it's a good amount of time to understand the basics of it. And not be overwhelmed, because we are not economic experts.
No, not really. And before we start, just a quick mention, we do have a movie channel. So if you want to see us, I don't know, I wanted to make some segue from the culture comment I made earlier, but I have no ideas, so I'm just going to plug it. I was just going to say we have the movie channel where we post movie reactions every Friday. You can find it in the description box or at the end of this video. So if you'd like to subscribe to that would help us out a lot, and you might find something cool to watch. And in the description box, you will also find our Patreon. And if you're interested in that, then you could have access to like more influence on our channels, our Discord server, some early access to our videos. If you like that, then check it out.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
In modern history, people went from parties, jazz music, and riches in the roaring 20s to losing their life savings and standing in bread lines in the span of a few years. And the Depression wasn't just in America. Its impact spread across the world and ultimately led to the start of World War II.
Like you said.
But what exactly caused the Depression? And what lessons can we learn from it? Let's start in 1918. World War I has just ended, and American soldiers are returning home having won the war. Ah, it feels good to be back. During the war, women had for the first time begun to enter the workforce, and with men returning now, the economy saw a post-war boom. This economic boom, alongside a growing culture change, created the era known as the Roaring Twenties. Party! At this time in Detroit, Michigan, a man named Henry Ford would revolutionize transportation with the Ford Model T car. Facing huge demand for the car, his company introduced the process of the moving assembly line. This mass production dropped the car's price from $780 in 1910 to $290 in 1924.
I wonder how much that is.
Making it the first inexpensive car for the masses. By 1927, the 15 millionth Model T would roll out of the factory. You get a car. You get a car. Everyone gets a car. Many companies would copy this assembly line process to mass-produce other inventions, including the radio, washing machine, and vacuum. With mass production of new products and improved advertising using the radio, the age of consumerism had officially begun.
Okay.
Everyone wanted the latest
Sounds
and
good so
greatest
far,
new
so when did it
product.
go wrong?
To help with the demand, banks began giving out loans more freely to people so that they could buy these new products on credit with money they didn't yet have. Times were good. People were partying, there was jazz music, and a spirit of social liberation. Good to see you at the party, old sport. Prohibition had started in 1920, but meant little to this new generation. The parties were bigger, the morals were looser, and Wall Street became the place to be. From 1921 to 1929, the US stock market increased sixfold, driven by the post-war boom, easy credit, and all the demand for new consumer products. As the public learned about these incredible returns from the stock market, everyone began putting money in and talking about it more. This created a snowball effect, where as the stock market continued to go up, people began to blindly sink all their savings into stocks, and some even took out loans, which further drove prices up. When people believe no price is too high for a stock, that can be a warning sign that the price is no longer based on fundamentals and may have been driven up to irrational levels. Although stock prices were reaching new highs, something wasn't right. By the mid-1920s, the economy and demand for products had slowed drastically. With Europe still recovering from the aftermath of World War I, and few countries being able to afford the new consumer items, global trade was stalling. This didn't matter as people were still overwhelmingly optimistic and expected the stock market would continue to see record yearly performances each year. Extreme greed and unrealistic fantasy filled the air. With margin, people could even buy stocks for only 40 to 10% of the actual stock price, and then pay off their loan when the stock sold for large profits.
I didn't understand this. Did you?
That they could take out loans for the stocks to buy them for the 10% of the value?
Yeah.
But you can watch it again if you want.
I will come back because I want to fully grasp the situation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Also,
What do you think
I'm wondering what the party mean, because I remember that there was a prohibition at the time, so the partying was...
Yeah, but I think that's what he said, that it didn't matter that much to these people. And I think that's kind of what we saw in the oversimplified video that we have watched, that the parties were still going on.
Yeah,
it didn't really matter.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Again.
Extreme greed and unrealistic fantasy filled the air. With margin, people could even buy stocks for only 40 to 10% of the actual stock price, and then pay off their loan when the stock sold for large profits.
40 to 10% of the...
You understand it now?
Not really, because I don't understand what is this margin buying. I didn't know that you can buy like a stock price.
I think you're just borrowing against the government, and then you pay the rest. But you actually own all of it. It's just that you have to pay the... So that's a pretty good deal, right? Because you're already making all the profit. You just have to pay back for the original price.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not such an... Like I said in the beginning, I'm not such an expert of economy. I understand some.
Yeah, I think the fault is kind of that we don't really learn economy at school. I don't know about your school, but it's like there are elements of it in different subjects, but there is not a single economy subject. There was actually at my school, like an optional subject, because I did an international program, not the Polish one, but I didn't. I think I wanted to do it, but we didn't even have a big enough class because there's just not that much interest in it.
Yeah, I think if you ask like 100 random people on the street about how the stock market works, I think like maybe 8 of them would be able to...
Yeah, I don't
explain
think
it to you.
People even know how inflation works, or like if you ask random people on the street, like, can we print more money to fix the debt issue? I think a lot of them are gonna say yes.
Yeah.
So
I always thought that it would be a good idea. Maybe I know it's maybe controversial for some people, but I don't fully believe that the democracy is such a good system, that everyone should vote, because I believe that you should have at least some knowledge, about how the things,
Like in ancient
how
Greece.
things work. No, in the ancient Greece, you didn't have to know. You just had to be a man.
You have to be knowledgeable. There was no test, but apparently the test was the age.
Really, you had to be
The
older.
older man, I think. It was like from 30 or something. I don't think it was
30
old man.
is not so
At the
much.
time. But I don't know. I may be saying it wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, but like I said, I think it would be a good idea to have like a test, before voting. Like you need to be able to explain what is an inflation, what and to be able to explain the parliamentary system in the country that you are living in. Like if you are in the United States, for example, what is a Congress, for what is the reason for Congress, who is the governor, what are the duties of the governor.
That's an interesting idea. I don't necessarily know if I agree. It's definitely extremely controversial what you're saying, but at the same time, it's kind of like you have a test when you want to become a citizen of some. I'm just trying to make that connection, a citizen of a country, and you actually have to answer history questions and language questions in order to become the citizen, to gain voting rights.
Where?
For example, if you wanted to become a Polish citizen, you have to pass a test. If you wanted to become a citizen in the UK, you also have to pass a test. It's like a small history test. I don't know if all the countries have it.
Yeah, I think not all the countries, because usually it's only the language.
Yeah, but it's quite common that there's like a small test, like culture thing. It's not like you have A level, but there's some questions to be answered. So maybe kind of the same logic, but not really. But
yeah, I think it would help, and also I think the politicians would be more interested in educating people, because if they would want them to vote for them, they would have to put an effort to educate people on that.
That's an interesting idea.
And if you have an educated society, then it can be bad for you. All right, let's go back to this margin buying.
I would like to take out a loan. Sure, what for? A house, a business, a farm? To buy stocks. Fine by me. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
By
Okay.
1929, 40% of US consumer debt was being used to purchase stocks.
Ooh.
And
Oh,
in
wow.
that same year,
That's really
the
a lot.
US had just elected a new president, Herbert Hoover, who famously said, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in the history of any land. The poorhouse is vanishing from among us." To many people, a skyrocketing stock market was a sign of a healthy, booming economy. But things were about to take a dark turn. Catastrophe would hit. On October the 24th, 1929, a day that became known as Black Thursday, the stock market would see heavy liquidation, with a record 12.9 million shares sold, and the entire stock market fell 11%. This day marked the beginning of the Great Depression, and the following week there would be Black Tuesday, where the market fell 12%, with a record-breaking 16.4 million shares sold. Eventually, in the span of 2 weeks, stocks had lost about a third of their value. People who had borrowed money to invest were crushed, and many people lost their life savings. However, the worst was yet to come. The common belief is that the stock market crash caused the Great Depression, but this is not entirely true.
Okay.
The stock market triggered a recession.
Yeah.
The real cause of the Great Depression was that many banks had extended too many bad loans and were speculating too much. At this time, many US banks were small and independent shops that lent out a large amount of their assets to people for stock market speculation. As the stock market crashed, these banks went out of business overnight. There was no deposit insurance at the time, so if a local bank closed its doors, people lost their money. With headlines of many banks shutting down, people began to panic and pull their savings from healthy banks. This created bank runs on otherwise healthy banks that had to turn around and try to get all their customers' money all at once. This became a serious problem when in New York City, a false rumor started that the Bank of the United States refused to sell a man's stock. This was enough to cause over 25,000 people to crowd the bank, and by the end of the day, $3 million had been withdrawn.
Oh my
from the
god.
bank. Fear
But
was in
imagine
the air,
working at that
and
bank.
worried of a larger bank run they couldn't handle, the Bank of the United States closed its doors and asked the state to take over the bank's assets. Soon after, the bank failed to get
It reminds me the situation from 2008. You remember we were watching this movie, Big Short?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
About the crisis in the 2008 because of the recession on
Very similar themes. I was just thinking about it. Also, bad loans, like the banks borrowing more money than they had and making very bad risk assessments.
Yeah. Borrowing money to the people just because
lending money.
Yeah, sorry, lending money. You're right.
Right. I was correcting myself.
Bank lends the money and
it's always confusing terms because it's one word in Polish, and in many languages it's just one word. There's no distinction.
Yeah, but it's similar. And I don't know when we are as a society when we're gonna be smarter. Finally, to do something with those banks,
that we let these things happen again and again, right?
Yeah, and no one like in 2008, I think only one person was. Had some charges against him.
Yeah.
Only one person.
Yeah. It's really strange. Yeah. And I also wanted to say that it's quite scary, even nowadays, that, everyone tells you cannot keep your money and your savings just like in a sock underneath your bed because that's bad for it because inflation is going to hit it. So, and of course, I don't know, a burglar or a fire or whatever. So, of course, it's not safe. So then you have to trust the bank and you have to put it in the bank. But then so many things can happen.
You can buy gold and keep gold in your house.
But then the burglar is still possible. I think I don't know. If you guys know or if you want to speculate with me in the comments, then do that. But I don't know what's more likely, the bank and the economy crashing or the burglar in your house if you live in a very safe area. I would still say the burglar probably is more likely.
Yeah, but if you have a gold somewhere, the gold will always retain its value.
Yeah, but if you keep it in a bank and the bank closes, then you lose the gold.
No, it doesn't work that way nowadays.
What if there's a war?
Then you keep your gold in Switzerland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but if there's a war and even if illegally they have to give you back the gold, it may not be physically possible.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah, I'm saying, I don't know how to... I would like to protect myself against everything, and I don't think it's possible.
But it's like you are talking about like a world war, because even with wars nowadays, like in Ukraine, there is still a country
they
running,
were able to withdraw the money.
There is still a society, they will go to work, they have banks, they take loans, they have businesses, they are trying to keep their lives going on. So you're talking about like a global war.
Yeah, I think I am. A crisis. There we go. Let's go, because I'm talking too much.
And asked the state to take over the bank's assets. Soon after, the bank failed to get support for a short-term loan to stop the bank run and would ultimately close its doors for good. It accounted for a third of the total $550 million deposits lost in the Depression. This sent shockwaves across the banking industry, and many banks began to call in loans and sell assets in order to stay liquid. 1/3 of banks in America would ultimately fail in this time period. Hey Joe, I just sold my car and have a few bucks now to pay you back. Which bank are you with again?
Are you crazy? Not a chance I'm leaving my money in any of those banks again.
With people choosing to hold their money outside of banks, the money supply in the US declined 31% from 1929
no wonder.
to 1933. And deflation has devastating effects on an economy. By causing the value of money to go up, it reduces consumers' willingness to spend money, discourages investment, and increases the burden for those in debt. All of this leads to wages and income falling. And through this all, the Federal Reserve stood back, allowing this money supply contraction and the banking failures to happen without any intervention. A crucial mistake that has been widely criticized for making the Depression much worse than it needed to be. Through all of this, US President Herbert Hoover had no idea how to fix this and would largely be blamed for the lasting duration of the Depression. Following the initial stock market crash, there was a growing sentiment for isolationist and protectionist policies. In 1930, he passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act to protect US farmers and other industries from foreign competitors. It increased tariffs on foreign imports to the US by about 20%, which then immediately led to 25 countries retaliating and putting their own tariffs on American goods. Global trade would plummet even further from this, declining worldwide from
I was waiting for you.
1934. Global trade was a relatively small piece of the American economy at the time, but this policy only made things
Oh, that's
worse.
really small.
In total,
I guess
the
makes
Great
sense.
Depression would last over 10 years and mark the worst economic downturn in the history of the modern world. The Dow Jones would fall 90% from its high in 1929, and many lost their jobs as companies shut down en masse. 9 million savings accounts were wiped out. Over 9,000 US banks had failed. Industry halted, and unemployment in the US reached 24.9%.
That's crazy,
its highest
right?
point in history. To make matters worse, there was a period of severe dust storms in the middle of the US that
Oh, yeah, I
caused
knew about
drought,
that.
Yeah, of
high
course.
winds, and hurt many farms in what became known as the Dust Bowl.
If
The
it
worst
pours, it
man-made
rains.
ecological disaster in American history. As farming in the US slowed down, and with 1/3 of Americans still in agriculture, this would have massive consequences. Homelessness and breadlines became a common sight. In America, there would be 34 million people without any income. Shantytowns began appearing
like
across
the
the country
entire population
and
of
got
Poland.
the nickname
Yeah.
Hoovervilles
Yeah.
after the now disgraced president. Could it get any worse? In 1932, the US elected President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who promised drastic changes and action to get the country out of the Depression. With the New Deal program, for helping the needy, he established a minimum wage, overtime pay, unemployment insurance, and a social security program. As for major banking reforms, he enacted federal deposit
He was a great
insurance on
man,
bank
I must say.
deposits to help prevent bank runs.
Like
And
one
he
on
also
one of
added
the century.
Securities and Exchange Commission for better reporting
All these things that
and
are like common
scrutiny
sense
on
to us
public
now,
companies.
and to come up with them.
FDR's New Deal programs
Yeah, but also, you know, his effort in the Second World War.
Yeah. He was like so good on so many fields, you know, because some people, at least I think, like they are good in economy. Some people are good at war strategy, but he
Yeah,
was good
yeah,
at
like
everything.
like Churchill, for example. Churchill was good as a war leader, wartime leader, but he was not very good as a peacetime leader. And he lost the after winning the war, he lost the elections in 45 or 46. I think 46. But yeah, Roosevelt, you know, being the leader of the country, you know, from the Great Depression through the Second World War, leading the country to a victory in the biggest conflict in history. Basically, he made US what it is nowadays,
Yeah.
the global power. Like amazing, man. Like respect always.
and scrutiny on public companies. FDR's New Deal programs helped to stabilize the banking industry and restore the public's confidence. However, it would still take several years for the US economy to fully bounce back. With other countries around the world having also suffered from the Great Depression, this led to the rise of extremist governments, and World War II would begin just a few years later in 1939. It wasn't until the start of World War II in 1939 that the Great Depression truly ended. It was only at this time that the unemployment rate fell below 10%, and the US saw vast stimulus to support war efforts. Economists still argue how much intervention is needed to solve an economic disaster and the effect of the New Deal program. Many of the lessons learned from the Great Depression are still used in the modern day, including the need for a small, stable amount of inflation to boost consumer spending and business investment, an increased role in government spending, and the assistance from the government to boost the economy when a recession occurs. By learning from the past, we can better understand our current economic system and see any potential dangerous parallels in the future. In the end, it was greed that drove people to believe that there was no price too high for a stock and made many banks take on bad loans. And just like all bubbles, an overinflated market always sees the same ending of a painful crash. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more economic videos just like this.
I really liked it. That was a really clean explanation. I don't know if we will watch more of this channel on our channel, but I will definitely watch something on my own. For
Yeah,
sure.
and unless you have recommendations for us, then do it.
Yeah, then please let us know if there's anything else you want to see. But it was really clearly explained. I really liked it. I liked his calm voice. I liked the graphics, and it was this 12 minutes for me. It was exactly as long as I could.
Very informational. Like it's exactly what I wanted from this video. You know, understand the Great Depression, what happened, why it happened, and now I know. Now, if someone will ask me, you know, I will be like, oh, blah 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 blah.
But if you say that, then they might not take you seriously. But you know what I would like someone clever to explain to me? Like, how do we calculate the inflation? I was just thinking about that by the end when they said like a healthy amount of inflation is good. But it's kind of the same as I know how electricity works, but I could not for the life of me. I mean, I could explain it to you, but I don't have the intrinsic understanding, you know.
How inflation works?
Yeah, and no, not how inflation works, but how we calculate it. Like, how do I know that the inflation was exactly 2.5%, for example?
Because you have a national bank that prints money.
Yeah.
And they know that how much money they printed that year.
So
that's the inflation.
So they printed more money and that's the inflation.
Yeah.
So that's the only factor that we take. We don't take into account any like country obligations, how much they're worth, or like the stock market or something like that.
I don't think so. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically inflation is just extra money on the market.
Okay.
That should not be there technically.
Okay.
And
then that's easy.
And like he said, I never understood it exactly. Now he made it more clear, but still I would like to read into that more. Mm-hmm. But what he said, that the healthy level of inflation is around 2%. Mm-hmm. And you don't want deflation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't understood why, because it seemed to me, you know, like, oh, it's good, you know, things are getting cheaper. But after this video, I'm smarter. I know why.
Too. Yeah, because he said that it's like people don't want to spend money.
Yeah, and also if you are owing money to someone, you know, it's like a bigger burden.
Yeah. Really good video. Thanks for finding it.
Yeah, really.
And thank you guys for watching with us. Are we finished? We are, right? Do you want to add anything?
I think I wanted to recommend you the movie, The Big Short, if you are interested in watching this.
Yeah, it was a really good one.
And don't be afraid, you know, it's... even if you are not an economic person, you can understand most of it.
And it's fun, but it will also teach you something, I would say. But it's not like an educational movie. It's a fun movie, but it will also teach you...
Lots happened, in the movie. You have many different characters, many different perspectives, and it's a very good movie to watch and
I agree.
Educate yourself a bit. Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, then comment them.
Check out our movie channel. Check out our Patreon if you'd like. And subscribe to this channel here. Leave us a like and comment anything because we love reading your comments. It always makes our day. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye.